Hello, everybody. Welcome to the daily political tarot readings here on the Black and Orange channel. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here 365 days of the year to take your political questions, but today is a special day because today we have the final January 6th Select Committee hearing, meeting, whatever you'd like to call it. They're calling it a hearing, so I'll just say that. So we're going to see who they're going to refer for hang on. Sorry, I thought I saw something. Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, so, and just as I said that and I looked up, there was a squirrel running across the power line behind the house. Squirrel. I got distracted. Squirrel. Anyway. 10% of my income from everything Black and Orange goes to Feeding America at feedingamerica.org, which supplies food to food banks across the country. It's an ongoing thing. And we have an excellent community here because of you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Holly says cute sweatshirt. This is the one I designed. So Christmas tree protection unit, cat division. So yeah, this is the sweatshirt. It is the only thing I have available right now in the store at bookartmedia.com, the store there. And yeah, so I'm pleased. And I love this. This is a Gildan sweatshirt, Gilden, which is actually my favorite brand of sweatshirt because it's such good quality and it's soft and it lasts. And so anyway, so that's that. So yeah, anyway, Ricky says, and the star of the show, the inspiration behind the Judas Priest song Living After Midnight, Boo Boos and Kitty. Oh, thank you, Kay. I have a Boo Boos and Kitty. Before we jump into the muck and the January 6th stuff and it gets so serious, I'm just going to pull up C-SPAN. We might switch over to MSNBC. It depends. But I have a cute boo-boo story. All right. Just because we need to remember that there is life beyond this and that we're going to get through this. So you guys know I got a whole thing of these cute little Christmassy little stuffed animals, what have you. Well, I guess one of them got loose, as it were, because I was in the other room and I looked down and Boo Boo comes right past me and he has something in his mouth. And he goes and he jumps in the bathtub, which is kind of where he goes to like hide things sometimes. Because you don't get as much, I'm only in there once a day. So I went and I looked. Sarah, no, we'll see what happens. It was the lion. He had this in his mouth and he took it to his place to store it away. Boo Boos and Kitty, lion hunter. So yes, Boo Boos and Kitty, lion hunter. So I wanted to share that. Oh, you can see a little tooth mark right there. Anyway, all right. Oh, thank you. Okay, so let me pull up C-SPAN and share screen. Be Grateful says maybe he thought it was a relative. Oh no, he was all proud of himself. He was all grr. All right.
Thank you to the cable and satellite companies who provide C-SPAN to viewers as a public service.
And here on C-SPAN, getting a look inside the Cannon House office building on Capitol Hill as we wait for members of January 6th committee to hold their final public meeting. The last time the committee met in public was in October. A reminder, our coverage of the January 6th committee and all C-SPAN programs are brought to you as a public service by the cable industry and these television providers, including Altice, WOW, Sparklight, and Charter Communications. We expect committee members to be entering the room in about 5 minutes or so. You can find complete coverage of the hearing on C-SPAN, but if you need to step away from your television at any point, you can continue following the hearing on the go on your mobile device with our video app, C-SPAN Now. It's free to download at the Apple Store and Google Play.
Okay, so we'll just wait on that. And I understand. Ricky says I'll be turning off the chat while I'm watching the hearing. I understand that. Be Grateful says, I don't know why, but this makes me nervous. Reminds me how terrible the actual January 6th event was. No, that's absolutely the case. And that's why we do this together, because it is stressful. So, but we made it through. And if anything else, just remember, Joe Biden is president. They failed. These insurrectionist, seditionist, blankety blanks failed. We are not going to lose our democracy. And we just want them held to account, but they failed. And do keep that in mind, okay? All right. Let me get my cards out because I'm sure there are things that will, yes, Ricky, those ignoramuses failed. Exactly. Exactly. I'll get my cards out in case things, in case there's some questions that come up. And we shall see. We shall see. All right. Just going to do a quick pull on how's it going to go? How is this going to go? Because it's pretty momentous. And the questions I was getting yesterday were major arcana. This is historic. And I'm so glad I can be here with you, because watching this on your own can be really stressful. Oh, Temperance card. See, we've got this together. So, is it Officer Fanone? Is that how you pronounce his name? And yes, Lucky Girl, thank you all for being here for each other. We're each other's support group. And Lucky Girl, you are a dear, an absolute dear. Oh, Patsy Klein. Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, MLR is saying CNN says nothing about Musk stepping down, just that he had previously said he'd abide by the poll. We shall see. Oh, so the poll did tell him he should step down. All right. How is the hearing today going to go? What's the effect it's going to have? Karen Conray says, I find Officer Fanone super. Absolutely. He didn't deserve that. He was fighting, literally fighting the good fight. All right, let me make myself just a little bigger for a second here, because it hasn't started yet. Okay, this is the last hearing. Okay, so they're going to make whatever recommendations they're going to make, and then we will move on. I think the focus will be moving more toward the DOJ now after today. Lynette says, so many of the first responders are so traumatized, and I feel so bad for them. Yeah. 9 of Wands, Page of Cups, plus Wheel of Fortune, 2 of Wands, Magician. They're standing up. The committee, they're standing up. This is a very momentous occasion. And this is not, the energy is so, I wouldn't call it somber, serious, but calm. The energy of the whole proceedings. There was an issue, to put it mildly. These people came together, they got the information, and here is They have the evidence, the communications, how people talk to each other. And today, the committee members, they are standing up. So it's just very steady. Ricky's asking, will the DOJ arrest Trump and his goons after their recommendations? It's going to take at least like a month or so. If they make any recommendations, at least that's what's been going on before. But the DOJ already has an open investigation going. And they are going, the January 6th Select Committee has not turned over all of the transcripts of the hearing, or the hearings that they've had, and the interviews they've had, which is a little puzzling to me, but they will after today. So the DOJ is about to get a whole lot of new information, as I imagine. Kathy PR says, thank you, Sebastian, for showing this, as we Americans outside the U.S. would not be able to watch. Oh, I'm glad I could help. Cassie Klein says, history in the making, folks. Whatever will happen, it's going to be historic, yes. Yes, thank you, moderators. Thank you. And things have been slowed down. You have to have been to comment, you have to have been a subscriber for, I think, 5 days. So, yeah. All right. I didn't grab any popcorn just because I'm just not feeling it. But anyway, it's 12:01. They should be walking in any moment now. Is there anything else here? Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. That's America. We're watching. We are watching. They've gathered the evidence. Oh, this is referring people to go up the river. Justice card. Oh yeah. Oh yes, they will be referring people. Oh yes, energy is like boom. Yeah. So, whew. Man. Okay. Whoops. Officer Fanon. Nancy. Or I probably shouldn't even mention names. There are some people. There's a couple of different people in the chat saying that Officer Fanon is he's a handsome guy. Yeah. Absolutely. Cheryl Clark has such energy. Yeah. Cosmic Goat Lady says NBC just flipped to the special. Anna has a hot cup of tea. Dave, I like that. America is tired of America. Yes. Nancy, the water chick, says pins and needles. That's okay. Yes, Betty, all are watching. Old Spirit Art says, I wouldn't throw him out. I love hanging out with you guys. Ladies, gentlemen, and gentlethems. Yes. Yeah, I'm just getting the same. They've come together. They turned to these jerks who are now. They don't have. You're done. You're done. You failed. You did not keep your emperor. And this is handing information over to the DOJ, Biden's DOJ. So, yeah, energy's pretty clear. Oh, we do have some people sitting up front, so there will be a bit of a hearing. Not just them coming out and excuse me, not just them coming out and making their recommendation. Oh my gosh, Karen, thank you so much. Thank you. That makes a huge difference. Thank you. So, oh my gosh. All right. So, just remember to breathe, and remember, if you're trying to calm down your system, breathe out longer than your breath in. Okay. So, and then in more quickly, and then slowly out. Quickly in, slowly out. Okay. All right. All right, hang in there, hang in there. I'm actually, I need to go run, I need to go grab a drink, but also, I'm okay. It doesn't hurt. But I was getting some toast out of the toaster oven and accidentally hit the top. So I need to put some moisturizer on this and just grab a soda, and I'll be right back, okay? We're going to be okay. We really are. We're going to be okay. All right.
Collected from more than 1,000 witnesses. Some of those witnesses who testified in public over the course of the committee's year-and-a-half-long investigation will be appearing today. A reminder, if you missed any of the previous hearings, or if you want to watch them again, visit our webpage, cspan.org/January 6.
I changed my mind about the popcorn. Let's have some popcorn. We've made it through. Joe Biden is president. We are going to be okay. Seriously, we're going to be okay. Just remember to breathe. You're not alone. We are in this together. All right, so now we're listening.
A quorum being present, the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point. Pursuant to House Deposition Authority Regulation 10, the chair announces the committee's approval to release the deposition material presented during today's meeting, and further, its approval to release deposition material that accompanies release of the Select Committee's final report. Good afternoon, and may God bless the United States of America. To cast a vote in the United States is an act of faith and hope. When we drop that ballot in the ballot box, we expect the people named on the ballot are going to uphold their end of the deal. The winner swears an oath and upholds it. Those who come up short ultimately accept the results and abide by the rule of law. That faith in our system is the foundation of American democracy. If the faith is broken, so is our democracy. Donald Trump broke that faith. He lost the 2020 election and knew it. But he chose to try to stay in office through a multi-part scheme to overturn the results and block the transfer of power. In the end, he summoned a mob to Washington, and knowingly they were armed and angry, pointed them to the Capitol and told them to fight like hell. There's no doubt about this. This afternoon, My colleagues will present our key findings, reminding you of some of the information we presented in earlier hearings and telling you how it fits in our broader conclusions. Those conclusions have helped shape the committee's final report, which we'll adopt today pursuant to House Resolution 503, which establishes the Select Committee nearly a year and a half ago. I expect our final work will be filed with the Clerk of the House and made public later this week. Beyond that release, the Select Committee intends to make public the bulk of its non-sensitive records before the end of the year. These transcripts and documents will allow the American people to see for themselves the body of evidence we've gathered and continue to explore the information that has led us to our conclusions. This committee is nearing the end of its work, but as the country, we remain in strange and uncharted waters. We've never had a president of the United States stir up a violent attempt to block the transfer of power. I believe nearly 2 years later, this is still a time of reflection and reckoning. If we are to survive as a nation of laws and democracy, this can never happen again. How do we stop it? This committee will lay out a number of recommendations in its final report, but beyond any specific details and recommendations we present, there's one factor I believe is most important in preventing another January 6th, accountability. So today, beyond our findings, we will also show that evidence we've gathered points to further action beyond the power of this committee or the Congress to help ensure accountability under law. Accountability that can only be found in the criminal justice system. We have every confidence that the work of this committee will help provide a roadmap to justice, and that the agencies and institutions responsible for ensuring justice under the law will use the information we've provided to aid in their work. And for those of you who have followed this committee's work, I hope we've helped make clear that there's a broader kind of accountability. Accountability to all of you, the American people. The future of our democracy rests in your hands. It's up to the people of this country to decide who deserves the public trust, who will put fidelity to the Constitution and democracy above all else, who will abide by the rule of law, no matter the outcome. I'm grateful to the millions of you who followed this committee's work. I hope we lived up to our commitment to present the facts and let the facts speak for themselves. Let me say in closing, the women and men seated around me on this dais are public servants in the most genuine sense. They put aside politics and partisanship to ensure the success of this committee in providing answers to the American people. I especially want to thank and acknowledge our Vice Chair, who has become a true partner in this bipartisan effort, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming. And I also recognize her for any opening statement that she cared to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your tremendous leadership of this committee. I know we all have benefited greatly from your wisdom and your wise counsel, so thank you very much. In April of 1861, when Abraham Lincoln issued the first call for volunteers for the Union Army, my great-great-grandfather, Samuel Fletcher Cheney, joined the 21st Ohio Volunteer Infantry. He fought through all 4 years of the Civil War, from Chickamauga to Stones River to Atlanta. He marched with his unit in the Grand Review of Troops up Pennsylvania Avenue in May of 1865, past a reviewing stand where President Johnson and General Grant were seated. Silas Canfield, the regimental historian of the 21st Ohio Volunteer Infantry, described the men in the unit this way. He said they had a just appreciation of the value and advantage of free government and the necessity of defending and maintaining it. And they enlisted, prepared to accept all the necessary labors, fatigues, exposures, dangers, and even death for the unity of our nation and the perpetuity of our institutions. I have found myself thinking often, especially since January 6th, of my great-great-grandfather and all those in every generation who have sacrificed so much for the unity of our nation and the perpetuity of our institutions. At the heart of our republic is the guarantee of the peaceful transfer of power. Members of Congress are reminded of this every day as we pass through the Capitol Rotunda. There, 8 magnificent paintings detail the earliest days of our republic. One, painted by John Trumbull, depicts the moment in 1793 when George Washington resigned his commission, handing control of the Continental Army back to Congress. Trumbull called this, quote, one of the highest moral lessons ever given the world. With this noble act, George Washington established the indispensable example of the peaceful transfer of power in our nation. Standing on the west front of the Capitol in 1981, President Ronald Reagan described it this way: the orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place, as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony that we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Every president in our history has defended this orderly transfer of authority, except one. January 6th, 2021 was the first time one American president refused his constitutional duty to transfer power peacefully to the next. In our work over the last 18 months, the Select Committee has recognized our obligation to do everything we can to ensure this never happens again. At the beginning of our investigation, we understood that tens of millions of Americans had been persuaded by President Trump that the 2020 election was stolen by overwhelming fraud. And we also knew this was flatly false. We knew that dozens of state and federal judges had addressed and resolved all manner of allegations about the election. Our legal system functioned as it should, but our president would not accept the outcome. Among the most shameful of this committee's findings was that President Trump sat in the dining room off the Oval Office, watching the violent riot at the Capitol on television. For hours, he would not issue a public statement instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol, despite urgent pleas from his White House staff and dozens of others to do so. Members of his family, his White House lawyers, virtually all those around him knew that this simple act was critical. For hours, he would not do it. During this time, law enforcement agents were attacked and seriously injured. The Capitol was invaded, the electoral count was halted, and the lives of those in the Capitol were put at risk. In addition to being unlawful, as described in our report, this was an utter moral failure and a clear dereliction of duty. Evidence of this can be seen in the testimony of President Trump's own White House counsel and several other White House witnesses. No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again. He is unfit for any office. The committee recognizes that our work has only begun. It's only the initial step in addressing President Trump's effort to remain in office illegally. Prosecutors are considering the implications of the conduct that we describe in our report, as are citizens all across our nation. In 1761, John Adams wrote, "The very ground of our liberties is the freedom of elections." Faith in our elections and the rule of law is paramount to our republic. Election deniers, those who refuse to accept lawful election results, purposely attack the rule of law and the foundation of our country. The history of our time will show that the bravery of a handful of Americans doing their duty saved us from an even more grave constitutional crisis. Elected officials, election workers, and public servants stood against Donald Trump's corrupt pressure. Many of our committee's witnesses showed selfless patriotism, and their words and courage will be remembered. The brave men and women of the Capitol Police, the Metropolitan Police, and all the other law enforcement officers who fought to defend us that day saved lives and our democracy. Finally, I wish to thank my colleagues on this committee. It has been a tremendous honor to serve with all of you. We have accomplished great and important things together, and I hope we have set an example. And I also want to thank all of those who have honorably contributed to the work of our committee and to our report. We have accomplished much over a short period of time. Many of you sacrificed for the good of our nation. You have helped make history, and I hope helped to right the ship. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. As you know, this is our final meeting of our committee. Over the course of the last year and a half, we presented evidence in 10 public hearings, testimony from our brave law enforcement officers, senior White House, and campaign officials, and many others. Today, we are prepared to share our final findings with you. But before we do so, it's important to remember what we've learned, and critically, exactly what happened at the United States Capitol on January 6th. Without objection, I include in the record a video presentation of some of the key evidence our investigation has uncovered.
There were officers on the ground. They were bleeding. They were throwing up. I mean, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood.
As I was swarmed by a violent mob, they ripped off my badge. They grabbed and stripped me of my radio. They seized ammunition that was secured to my body. They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects.
The key thing to do is to claim victory. No, we won. Fuck you. Sorry, over. We won. Yeah. You're wrong. Fuck you.
Right out of the box on election night, the president claimed that there was major fraud underway. I mean, this happened, as far as I could tell, before there was actually any potential of looking at evidence.
I didn't think what was happening was necessarily honest or professional at that point in time. So that led to me stepping away.
Generally discussed on that topic was whether the fraud, maladministration, abuse, or irregularities, if aggregated and read most favorably to the campaign, would that be outcome determinative? And I think everyone's assessment in the room, at least amongst the staff, Mark Short, myself, and Greg Jacob, was that it was not sufficient to be outcome determinative.
I told him that I did believe, yes, that once those legal processes were run, if fraud had not been established, that had affected the outcome of the election, then unfortunately, I believed that what had to be done was concede the outcome.
What were the chances of President Trump winning the election?
After that point?
Yes.
None.
So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
The numbers are the numbers. The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations and we investigated every single one of them.
Did one of them make a comment that they didn't have evidence, but they had a lot of theories?
That was Mr. Giuliani.
And what exactly did he say and how that come up?
My recollection, he said, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. You're asking me to do something that's never been done in history, the history of the United States. And I'm going to put my state through that without sufficient proof.
It's a tape earlier in the day
of Ruby Freeman and Shay Freeman Morris and one other gentleman, quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine.
In one of the videos we just watched, Mr. Giuliani accused you and your mother of passing some sort of USB drive to each other. What was your mom actually handing you on that video?
A ginger mint. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit.
He wanted to talk about that he thought the election had been stolen or was corrupt and that there was widespread fraud. And I had told him that our reviews had not shown that to be the case.
And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed.
Well, my first thought was, this is a terrible idea. Jeff Clark cannot be installed as acting Attorney General of the United States.
You ultimately told us that you described this meeting as not this meeting, the Georgia letter that was proposed as an effing murder-suicide pact. You remember using the term murder-suicide pact?
Yes.
Was it your impression that the vice president had directly conveyed his position on these issues to the president, not just to the world through a dear colleague letter, but directly to President Trump?
Many times. My view was that the vice president didn't have the legal authority to do anything except what he did.
And I said, hold on a second, I want to understand what you're saying. You're saying that you believe the vice president, acting as president of the Senate, can be the sole decision maker as to, under your theory, who becomes the next president of the United States? And you said yes. And I said, are you out of your effing mind?
The president was, all the attention was on what Mike would do or what Mike wouldn't do.
There's a telephone conversation between the president and the vice president, is that correct?
Yes.
The conversation was pretty heated.
Apologize for being impolite, but do you remember what she said her father called him?
The P word. It was clear that it was escalating and escalating quickly. So then when that tweet, the Mike Pence tweet was sent out, I remember us saying that was the last thing that needed to be tweeted at that moment. It felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
They've gained access to the second floor, and I've got public about 5 feet from me down here below.
Okay, copy. They are on the second floor, moving in now. We may want to consider getting out and leaving now. Copy.
Members of the BPT at this time were starting to fear for their own lives. There were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth.
Approximately 40 feet. That's all there was. 40 feet between the vice president and the mob.
Donald Trump and his allies and supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy.
We got derogatory information from OSINT suggesting that some very, very violent individuals were organizing to come to DC.
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. I remember looking at him and saying, Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th? He had responded something to the effect of, we're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful.
He personally asked for us to come to DC that day. And I thought, for everything he's done for us, if this is the only thing he's going to ask of me, I'll do it.
Well, basically, the president
got everybody riled up, told everybody to head on down. So we basically were just following what he said.
Within 15 minutes of leaving the stage, President Trump knew that the Capitol was besieged and under attack.
So are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Attorney General of the United States that day?
No.
Are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Homeland Security that day?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Did you ever hear the president
No.
ask for the national guard? Did you ever hear the president ask for law enforcement response?
No.
You got an assault going on the Capitol of the United States of America. And there's nothing. No call, nothing, zero.
I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong.
You on the staff did not want people to leave the Capitol.
On the staff?
In the White House.
I can't think of anybody, on that day who didn't want people to get out of the Capitol once particularly once the violence started. No. I mean,
What about the president?
Yeah.
well, she said the staff. So I answered.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff. I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think,
I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it.
General Flynn, do you believe in the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America?
Another officer unconscious. The sheriff. What sheriff?
I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last 18 months, the Select Committee has conducted a congressional investigation of enormous scale, seeking to uncover the depth and breadth of ex-President Trump's multi-part plan to reverse the lawful outcome of the 2020 presidential election. We've compiled an immense volume of documents collected from countless individuals, law enforcement agencies, and federal and state authorities. Many of our efforts to get the evidence required litigation in federal court, including the U.S. Supreme Court. We've taken the testimony of hundreds of witnesses. Now, while we couldn't show them all during the hearings, we focused on those who were most central, including our ex-president's White House aides, his senior Department of Justice officials, and senior members of his campaign. Based on this assembled evidence, the Select Committee has reached a series of specific findings. Now, many of these findings pertain to what has been called the big lie, the enormous effort led by ex-President Trump to spread baseless accusations and misinformation in an attempt to falsely convince tens of millions of Americans that the election had been stolen from him. Beginning even before the election and continuing through January 6th and thereafter, Donald Trump purposely disseminated false allegations of fraud in order to aid his effort to overturn the 2020 election. Ex-President Trump's decision to declare victory falsely on election night wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was premeditated. The committee has evidence that ex-President Trump planned to declare victory and unlawfully to call for the vote counting to stop, and that he told numerous allies about his intent in the weeks before the election. The committee found that Mr. Trump raised hundreds of millions of dollars with false representations made to his online donors. The proceeds from his fundraising, we have learned, have been used in ways that we believe are concerning. In particular, the committee has learned that some of those funds were used to hire lawyers. We've also obtained evidence of efforts to provide or offer employment to witnesses. For example, one lawyer told a witness the witness could, in certain circumstances, tell the committee that she didn't recall facts when she actually did recall them. That lawyer also did not disclose who was paying for the lawyer's representation, despite questions from the client seeking that information. He told her, quote, "We're not telling people where funding is coming from right now." We've learned that a client was offered potential employment that would make her, quote, "financially very comfortable" as the date of her testimony approached by entities that were apparently linked to Donald Trump and his associates. These offers were withdrawn or didn't materialize as reports of the content of her testimony circulated. The witness believed this was an effort to affect her testimony, and we are concerned that these efforts may have been a strategy to prevent the committee from finding the truth. Throughout the post-election period, ex-President Trump was told repeatedly by his campaign advisors, government officials, and others there was no evidence to support his claims of election fraud. Even since our last hearing, the Select Committee has obtained testimony from new witnesses who've come forward to tell us about their conversations with ex-President Trump on this topic. Here is one of his senior advisors, Hope Hicks.
Seeing evidence of fraud on a scale that would have impacted the outcome of the election. And I was becoming increasingly concerned that we were damaging his legacy.
What did the president say in response to what you just described?
He said something along the lines of, nobody will care about my legacy if I lose. So that won't matter. The only thing that matters is winning.
Despite all that, he continued to purposely and maliciously make false claims, sometimes within a day of being told that a particular claim was false and unsupported by the evidence. By the time the Electoral College met to cast its votes on December 14th, 2020, a number of President Trump's senior staff, cabinet officials, and members of his family were urging him to facilitate a peaceful transition to the incoming administration. He disregarded their advice, and he continued to claim publicly that the election had been stolen from him. Numerous state and federal courts evaluated and rejected the Trump campaign's claims of voter fraud, including 11 judges appointed by ex-President Trump himself. Many of these courts issued scathing opinions, criticizing the lack of evidence that ex-President Trump and his allies had advanced to support their claims. Numerous individuals associated with these efforts have since acknowledged that they were unable to find sufficient evidence of fraud to affect the election results, including in testimony to this Select Committee. Still, ex-President Trump repeated those false claims and tried to convince his supporters the election was stolen. This was an attempt to justify overturning the lawful election results. Donald Trump knowingly and corruptly repeated election fraud lies, which incited his supporters to violence on January 6th. He continues to repeat his meritless claim that the election was stolen even today and continues to erode our most cherished and shared belief in free and fair elections. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Building on his constant repetition of the big lie, President Trump engaged in an unprecedented effort to obstruct the joint session on January 6th, the proceeding where his electoral loss would be certified by Congress. This effort began in part in the states, which hold, count, and ultimately determine the winners of presidential elections. Many state officials were targeted by President Trump and his campaign. The local election workers he accused baselessly of election fraud, the state officials he pressured to stop the count or to find votes that didn't exist, and the state legislative officials he urged to disregard the popular will of the voters and their oath of office in order to name him the winner instead. Here are the Select Committee findings about President Trump's state pressure campaign. President Trump and his enablers repeatedly pressured state officials to take action to overturn the results of the election. The most dramatic example of this campaign of coercion was the president's January 2nd, 2021 call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which the president urged the secretary to find 11,780 votes he needed to change the outcome in that state. During that call, President Trump again repeated conspiracy theories about the election that his own appointees at the Department of Justice had already debunked. Trump also made what Secretary Raffensperger apparently considered a threat, accurately considered a threat, suggesting that Raffensperger and his attorney, that they could be subject to criminal prosecution if they didn't follow through with his demands. Then, in repeated telephone calls and in-person meetings, Donald Trump pressured state elections officials and state legislators to alter official election results. But courageous public servants, including Republicans like Rusty Bowers, held firm and refused to put Donald Trump over their oath to the Constitution. When Donald Trump's pressure campaign did not achieve the results he wanted, he oversaw an effort to obtain and transmit false electoral college ballots to Congress and the National Archives. The false ballots were created by fake Republican electors on December 14th. At the same time, the actual certified electors in those states were meeting to cast their votes for President Biden. By that point in time, election-related litigation was over in all or nearly all of these states, and Trump campaign election lawyers realized that the fake slates were unjustifiable on any grounds and may be unlawful. In spite of these concerns and the concerns of individuals in the White House counsel's office, President Trump and others proceeded with this plan. The Select Committee has developed evidence that these intentionally false documents were transmitted to multiple officers of the federal government and were intended to interfere with the proper conduct of the joint session, where the existence of so-called competing slates of electors would serve as a pretext for legitimate electoral votes to be rejected. President Trump repeatedly attacked state and local officials who refused to do his bidding, as well as local elections workers who he baselessly accused of fraud. As Ruby Freeman and the testimony of other elections officials so powerfully demonstrated, the people who drew President Trump's ire or were the subject of his lies faced real-world consequences, including public harassment and death threats. Some of these elections workers and officials have been forced to leave their homes. Others have been forced to leave the jobs they loved. Take a listen to Ms. Freeman's story.
Now I won't even introduce myself by my name anymore. I get nervous when I bump into someone I know in the grocery store who says my name. I'm worried about who's listening. I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation.
The treatment of Ms. Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss and so many others around the country was callous, inhuman, inexcusable, and dangerous. And those responsible should be held accountable. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly one of the many important components of our federal government is the Department of Justice. It's the body that it's responsible for enforcing our laws and investigating criminal wrongdoing. For this reason, it's of the utmost importance that our Department of Justice operates as a fair and neutral body that enforces our federal laws without fear or without favor. It is this critical function that President Trump sought to corrupt, as he sought to use the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute purported election fraud and to help him convince the public that the election was stolen. The Select Committee has made the following findings with respect to the Department of Justice. In the weeks immediately following the 2020 election, Attorney General Bill Barr advised President Trump that the Department of Justice had not seen any evidence to support Trump's theory that the election was stolen by fraud. No evidence. Over the course of the 3 meetings in this post-election period, Attorney General Barr assured President Trump that the Justice Department was properly investigating claims of election fraud. He debunked numerous election fraud claims, many of which the president would then go on to repeat publicly. And he made clear that President Trump was doing, quote, a great disservice to the country by pursuing them. After Attorney General Barr's resignation, President Trump requested that the acting leadership of the department, Jeffrey Rosen and Richard Donahue, quote, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. In other words, just tell a small lie to put the facade of legitimacy on this lie, and the Republican congressman and I can distort and destroy and create doubt all ourselves. Between December 23rd and January 3rd, President Trump called or met with them nearly every day and was told repeatedly the department investigation showed no factual support for Trump's fraud allegations. Mr. Rosen and Mr. Donahue told him that the fraud claims were simply untrue. As Mr. Rosen and Mr. Donahue continued to resist, President Trump then tried to install a loyalist named Jeffrey Clark to lead the department as acting attorney general. On several occasions, Clark met with the president, apparently along with Representative Scott Perry, without authorization, promising to take the actions that Barr, Rosen, and Donahue had refused to take. In particular, Mr. Clark intended to send a letter that he had drafted with the help of a political appointee that the White House installed at DOJ with just weeks left in the administration. Mr. Clark intended to send the letter to officials in numerous states, informing them falsely, of course, that the department had identified significant concerns about the election results in their state and encouraging their state legislatures to come into special session to consider appointing Trump rather than Biden electors. Here's Acting Deputy Attorney General Donahue describing his reaction to Mr. Clark's proposed letter.
Some drafting letters without the knowledge of what the department had actually done in terms of investigations, that he was being reckless. And I recall toward the end saying, what you're proposing is nothing less than the United States Justice Department meddling in the outcome of a presidential election.
Knowing that existing department leadership would not support his false election claims, President Trump offered Mr. Clark the job of acting attorney general. In a dramatic January 3rd meeting in the Oval Office, Rosen, Donahue, White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and White House lawyer Eric Hirschman strongly objected to the appointment of Jeffrey Clark as acting attorney general. Mr. Clark pleaded his case and offered to send the letter that he had drafted. The White House counsel called the Clark letter, quote, a murder-suicide pact. Numerous White House and Department of Justice lawyers all threatened to resign if Mr. Clark was appointed. Donald Trump would be leading a graveyard. It was only after the threat of mass resignations that President Trump rescinded his offer to Mr. Clark. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Former President Trump's multi-part plan didn't stop with the states or with the Department of Justice. It touched nearly every component of our federal system, ranging from the courts to Congress to his own Vice President, Mike Pence. In the weeks before January 6th, Mr. Trump turned to the man who had served him loyally for 4 years. He embraced an illegal scheme proposed by John Eastman and others who concocted an unfounded legal theory that the vice president could reject Joe Biden's electoral votes during the joint session. When Vice President Pence and many others, including Trump's own lawyer, John Eastman, told him correctly that former President Trump spearheaded an unprecedented campaign to coerce him to do it anyway, ultimately culminating in a dangerous threat to Mr. Pence's life on January 6th. These are the Select Committee's findings with respect to the pressure campaign against the vice president. John Eastman admitted in advance of the 2020 election that Mike Pence could not lawfully refuse to count official electoral votes, but he nevertheless devised a meritless proposal that deployed a combination of bogus election fraud claims and the fake electoral ballots to say that Mike Pence, presiding over the joint session, could reject legitimate electoral votes for President-elect Biden. But still, President Trump accepted and repeated Eastman's theory and used it to pressure the vice president to take unlawful action. In multiple heated conversations, President Trump directly pressured Vice President Pence to adopt the Eastman theory and either reject the electors or send them back to the state legislatures. The vice president consistently resisted and repeatedly told the president that he did not possess the authority to do what President Trump directed. This culminated in an angry phone call on the morning of January 6th between President Trump and Vice President Pence, during which the former president repeatedly berated Mr. Pence by cursing and leveling threats. White House staffer Nick Luna was one of the many witnesses who heard the call as it happened. Take a listen at Mr. Luna's testimony.
Did you hear any part of the phone call, even if just the end that the president was speaking from?
I did, yes.
All right, and what'd you hear?
So as I was dropping off the note, my memory, I remember hearing the word wimp. Either he called him a wimp. I don't remember if he said, you are a wimp, you'll be a wimp. Wimp is the word I remember. Something to the effect, the wording's wrong. I made the wrong decision 4 or 5 years ago.
In the face of the vice president's resistance, the former president and others exerted both private and public pressure to change his mind. In his speech on the Ellipse on the afternoon of January 6th, former President Trump told the crowd that Vice President Pence needed the courage to do what he has to do. Once the riot began, President Trump deliberately chose to issue a tweet attacking Mr. Pence, knowing that the crowd had already grown violent. Almost immediately thereafter, the crowd around the Capitol surged, and between 2:30 and 2:35 p.m., the Metropolitan Police line on the west front of the Capitol broke. This was the first time in MPD history that a line like this had broken. Rioters at the Capitol were heard chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," through the afternoon. As a result of this unrest, Vice President Pence was forced to flee to a secure location where he actively coordinated with law enforcement and other governmental officials to address the ongoing violence. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Murphy, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ultimately, President Trump did not succeed in bending state and federal officials to his will. At every turn, state officials, the Department of Justice, Mike Pence, and many others stood up for the rule of law and resisted the president's wishes. In that way, our American institutions held after the 2020 election. But that did not stop President Trump. Instead, he turned to his supporters, those who believed his lies about a stolen election. He summoned a crowd to the nation's capital on January 6, hoping that they would pressure Congress to do what he could not do on his own. The Select Committee has made the following findings on this issue. 2 years ago today, in the early morning hours of December 19th, Donald Trump sent a tweet urging his supporters to travel to Washington for a protest on January 6th. "Be there, we'll be wild," he tweeted. Between December 19th and January 6th, the president repeatedly encouraged his supporters to come to Washington. The president's December 19th tweet galvanized domestic violent extremists, including members of the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and organized militia groups. These individuals began organizing to come to the Capitol in large numbers with the specific intent to use violence to disrupt the certification of the election during the joint session. Prior to January 6th, the FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Capitol Police, D.C. government, and other law enforcement agencies gathered substantial evidence suggesting the risk of violence at the Capitol during the joint session. These included warnings like the following. Their plan is to literally kill people. Please, please take this tip seriously and investigate further. President Trump supporters have proposed a movement to occupy Capitol Hill. Alert regarding the VP being a dead man walking if he doesn't do the right thing. I saw several other alerts saying they will storm the Capitol if he doesn't do the right thing. In the days leading up to January 6th, President Trump's advisors explicitly told him that he should encourage his supporters to be peaceful that day, but he refused. One witness, Hope Hicks, provided the committee with records of her text messages on January 6th. In one exchange with another staffer, he texted her, "Hey, I know you're seeing this, but he," referring to President Trump, "really should tweet something about being nonviolent." "I'm not there," Hicks replied. "I suggested it several times Monday and Tuesday, and he refused." When Ms. Hicks came in to provide testimony to the committee, we asked her about this exchange. Her explanation is that the "he" in this text wasn't the president, but rather it was Eric Hirschman. Take a listen to her testimony.
When you wrote, "I suggested it several times," and it presumably means that the president say something about being nonviolent. You wrote, "I suggested it several times Monday and Tuesday, and he refused." Tell us what happened.
Sure. I didn't speak to the president about this directly, but I communicated people like Eric Hirschman that it was my view that it was important that the president put out some kind of message in advance of the event.
And what was Mr. Hirschman's response?
Mr. Hirschman said that he had made the same, recommendation directly to the president, and that he had refused.
Just so I understand, Mr. Hirschman said that he had already recommended to the president that the president convey a message that people should be peaceful on January 6th, and the president had refused to do that?
Yes.
The public will be able to review this in the transcripts and see the perspective Eric Hirschman gave before we took Hope Hicks's testimony. Despite having knowledge of the threats of violence presented by the crowd gathered on January 6th, President Trump gave an incendiary speech, declaring without basis that the election had been stolen and encouraging his supporters to fight like hell. And during the speech and immediately thereafter, President Trump stated his intention to travel to the Capitol with his supporters in an effort to influence the joint session. The Select Committee has developed evidence indicating that President Trump did, in fact, intend to go to the Capitol on the afternoon of January 6th, and that he repeatedly expressed that intention during the afternoon and in the days prior. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Mrs. Luria for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of President Trump's efforts came to a head on the afternoon of January 6th. Standing on the stage of the ellipse, President Trump told tens of thousands of angry supporters that the election was stolen, that they had the power to change that if they marched to the Capitol, and that they wouldn't have a country anymore if the presidency was taken away from him. He told them he would be there with them. And then, as the crowd descended on the Capitol, President Trump watched it on television. Despite pleas from his senior advisors, from lawmakers on the Hill, and from his own children, President Trump would not issue a public statement, instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol. Mr. Trump's failures spanned the period from 1:10 p.m., when his speech ended, and he instructed his supporters to march to the Capitol, to 4:17 p.m., when he finally, begrudgingly, told his supporters to go home. For 187 minutes, he actively disregarded his constitutional obligation to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. As we've established through months of investigation, that is because the mob wanted what President Trump wanted, to impede the peaceful transition of power. These are the Select Committee's findings about President Trump's dereliction of duty. From the outset of the violence, and for several hours that followed, people at the Capitol, people inside President Trump's administration, elected officials of both parties, members of President Trump's own family, and even Fox News commentators who were sympathetic to President Trump, all tried to contact the White House to urge him to do one singular thing, the one thing that all of these people immediately understood was required: instruct his supporters to leave the Capitol. The president repeatedly refused pleas as he watched the violence at the Capitol on television. During the day, the president never spoke with National Guard, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, or any law enforcement agency. At no point during the day, or any other, did he issue any order to deploy any law enforcement agency to assist. Multiple witnesses, including President Trump's White House counsel, testified to these facts. Your White House employees, who had been speaking directly with President Trump, state that he didn't want anything done. The president was making phone calls that afternoon, but they weren't to law enforcement officials. Rather, President Trump continued to call his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Both President Trump and Mr. Giuliani spoke with congressional leaders, even after the violence had begun, to encourage them to continue delaying the session. Approximately 3 hours after being informed of the violence at the Capitol, hours during which, as our evidence has shown, Donald Trump sat in his dining room and watched the violence on television, the president released a video statement in which he again repeated that the election was stolen, told his supporters at the Capitol that he loved them, and ultimately suggested that they disperse. This statement had an immediate impact on elements of the crowd, many of whom have testified that it led them to depart the Capitol. At 6:01 p.m., President Trump sent his last tweet of the day. He did not condemn the violence. Instead, he attempted to justify it. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away, he wrote. Remember this day forever. There's no doubt that President Trump thought that the actions of the rioters were justified. In the days after January 6th, he spoke to several different advisors. And in those conversations, he minimized the seriousness of the attack. Here's new testimony from another one of President Senior's advisors, Kellyanne Conway.
You said you talked to the president the next day. Tell us about that conversation on the 7th.
Yeah, I don't think it was very long. I just said that was just a terrible day. I'm working on a long statement. I said it's crazy.
What did he say?
No, these people are upset. They're very upset.
In the days following the attack, President Trump also expressed a desire to pardon those involved in the attack. Since then, he's suggested that he will do so if he returns to the Oval Office. In summary, President Trump lit the flame He poured gasoline on the fire and sat by in the White House dining room for hours watching the fire burn. And today, he still continues to fan those flames. That was his extreme dereliction of duty. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for your extraordinary leadership of this committee. Generations to come will praise you and the Vice Chair for your unswerving devotion to the rule of law. Several months ago, you tasked several of our members in a subcommittee with bringing recommendations to the full committee about potential referrals to the Department of Justice and other authorities based on evidence of criminal and civil offenses that has come to our attention over the course of our investigation. We are now prepared to share those recommendations today. Mr. Chairman, let me begin with some relevant background considerations to our criminal referrals. The dangerous assault on American constitutional democracy that took place on January 6, 2021 consists of hundreds of individual criminal offenses. Most such crimes are already being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. We propose to the committee advancing referrals where the gravity of the specific offense, the severity of its actual harm, and the centrality of the offender to the overall design of the unlawful scheme to overthrow the election compel us to speak. Ours is not a system of justice where foot soldiers go to jail and the masterminds and ringleaders get a free pass. Mr. Chairman, as you know, our committee had the opportunity last spring to present much of our evidence to a federal judge, something that distinguishes our investigation from any other congressional investigation I can recall. In the context of resolving evidentiary privilege issues related to the crime fraud doctrine, in the Eastman case, U.S. District Court Judge David Carter examined just a small subset of our evidence to determine whether it showed the likely commission of a federal offense. The judge concluded that both former President Donald Trump and John Eastman likely violated two federal criminal statutes. This is the starting point for our analysis today. The first criminal statute we invoke for referral, therefore, is Title 18, Section 1512C, which makes it unlawful for anyone to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding of the United States government. We believe that the evidence described by my colleagues today and assembled throughout our hearings warrants a criminal referral of former President Donald J. Trump, John Eastman, and others for violations of this statute. The whole purpose and obvious effect of Trump's scheme were to obstruct, influence, and impede this official proceeding, the central moment for the lawful transfer of power in the United States. Second, we believe that there is more than sufficient evidence to refer former President Donald J. Trump, John Eastman, and others for violating Title 18, Section 371. This statute makes it a crime to conspire to defraud the United States. In other words, to make an agreement to impair, obstruct, or defeat the lawful functions of the United States government by deceitful or dishonest means. Former President Trump did not engage in a plan to defraud the United States acting alone. He entered into agreements, formal and informal, with several other individuals who assisted him with his criminal objectives. Our report describes in detail the actions of numerous co-conspirators who agreed with and participated in Trump's plan to impair, obstruct, and defeat the certification of President Biden's electoral victory. That said, the subcommittee does not attempt to determine all of the potential participants in this conspiracy, as our understanding of the role of many individuals may be incomplete even today because they refuse to answer our questions. We trust that the Department of Justice will be able to form a far more complete picture through its own investigation. Third, We make a referral based on Title 18, Section 1001, which makes it unlawful to knowingly and willfully make materially false statements to the federal government. The evidence clearly suggests that President Trump conspired with others to submit slates of fake electors to Congress and the National Archives. We believe that this evidence we set forth in our report is more than sufficient for a criminal referral of former President Donald J. Trump and others in connection with this offense. As before, we don't try to determine all of the participants in this conspiracy, many of whom refuse to answer our questions while under oath. We trust that the Department of Justice will be able to form a more complete picture through its own investigation. The fourth and final statute we invoke for referral is Title 18, Section 2383. The statute applies to anyone who incites, assists, or engages in insurrection against the United States of America, and anyone who gives aid or comfort to an insurrection. An insurrection is a rebellion against the authority of the United States. It is a grave federal offense anchored in the Constitution itself, which repeatedly opposes insurrections and domestic violence, and indeed uses participation in insurrection by office holders as automatic grounds for disqualification from ever holding public office again at the federal or state level. Anyone who incites others to engage in rebelling, assists them in doing so, or gives aid and comfort to those engaged in insurrection is guilty of a federal crime. The committee believes that more than sufficient evidence exists for a criminal referral of former President Trump for assisting or aiding and comforting those at the Capitol who engaged in a violent attack on the United States. The committee has developed significant evidence that President Trump intended to disrupt the peaceful transition of power under our Constitution. The president has an affirmative and primary constitutional duty to act to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Nothing could be a greater betrayal of this duty than to assist in insurrection against the constitutional order. The complete factual basis for this referral is set forth in detail throughout our report. These are not the only statutes that are potentially relevant to President Trump's conduct related to the 2020 election. Depending on evidence developed by the Department of Justice, the president's actions could certainly trigger other criminal violations. Nor are President Trump and his immediate team the only people identified for referrals in our report. As part of our investigation, we asked multiple members of Congress to speak with us about issues critical to our understanding of this attack on the 2020 election and our system of constitutional democracy. None agreed to provide that essential information. As a result, we took the significant step of issuing them subpoenas based on the volume of information particular members possessed about one or more parts of President Trump's plans to overturn the election. None of the subpoenaed members complied, and we are now referring 4 members of Congress for appropriate sanction by the House Ethics Committee for failure to comply with lawful subpoenas. Mr. Chairman, we understand the gravity of each and every referral we are making today, just as we understand the magnitude of the crime against democracy that we describe in our report. But we have gone where the facts and the law lead us, and inescapably, they lead us here. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, in light of these facts, I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be directed to transmit to the United States Department of Justice relevant select committee records in furtherance of these criminal referrals.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to notice, I now call up Select Committee's final report pursuant to Section 4A of House Resolution 503. The clerk shall designate the report.
Final report of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol.
Without objection, the report will be considered read and open to amendment at this point. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Virginia, Ms. Luria, for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report to the House the Select Committee's final report, which includes the committee's legislative recommendations and criminal referrals of Donald J. Trump and others, pursuant to Section 4A of House Resolution 503.
The question is on the motion to favorably report to the House. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Cheney?
Aye.
Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Lofgren?
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren, aye. Mr. Schiff?
Aye.
Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Aguilar?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mrs. Murphy?
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy, aye. Mr. Raskin?
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Mrs. Luria?
Aye.
Mrs. Luria, aye. Mr. Kinzinger?
Kinzinger, aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, aye.
How is the chair recorded?
Mr. Chairman, you are not recorded.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
The clerk will report the vote.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, there are 9 ayes and 0 noes.
The motion is agreed to. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, staff is authorized to make any necessary technical or conforming changes to the report to reflect the actions of the committee. The chair requests those in the hearing room remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted members from the room. There being no further business, without objection, the Select Committee stands adjourned.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. Okay, where is it? We're going. Hang on. Percent share screen. We have. See,
report, and you just saw it there. They weren't going to read off the individual referrals for criminal charges that were laid out in the report. Instead, they did it all together in one final vote, with everybody voting aye. Let's put up the referrals to the DOJ for Donald Trump on your screen.
Oh, yeah. Why didn't they name
for a
him?
moment as we take you out of this hearing room, just to show you what this means. Obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to make a false statement, incite, assist, or aid, and comfort and insurrection. Those are the referrals from the House Select Committee to the DOJ regarding Donald Trump. Let's bring in our panel with us, Andrea. This, again, is going to be the first time that Congress makes these referrals on a former president. So our panel is back with us. Former U.S. Attorney and Senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. Attorney and Law Professor Joyce Vance, former Assistant FBI Director Frank Figluzzi, Danelle Harvin, former D.C. Chief of Homeland Security, and Ari Melber, our Chief Legal Correspondent and host of The Beat. So Ari, I'm going to start with you. What do you make of what they laid out? What are your headline thoughts?
This is a huge deal. They just threw the book at Donald Trump. They just named him and his potential co-conspirators. Let's put it according to the committee, which made the news, and we can also discuss the defenses and replies afforded to Donald Trump and others. But according to the committee, Donald Trump is a felon, an insurrectionist, someone who wanted to riot but just physically couldn't get there. According to the committee, he has co-conspirators in Clark and Eastman, people inside the government who were planning the coup. According to the committee, Donald Trump's purpose and goal in advance was to overthrow the election through any means necessary, violent and otherwise. What's really key here about this satchel of charges that they recommend, and the DOJ will make up its own mind, is the committee is basically saying, we got you, we have the receipts, we have the video. This all was planned and that you had a method to do this both violently and this is important, illegally but peacefully, what sometimes is colloquially known as a bloodless coup. So you take that all together, Katie and Andrea, and what you have here is the complete highest, most aggressive possible case. As we watch the sort of the folks in the room, including I think we're looking at one of the officers talk to reporters and others gathered there. This is the highest possible, most aggressive case you could make. And in terms of the news, if you're watching at home going, okay, Ari, I've heard about Donald Trump getting in trouble before, and I've heard this committee throw allegations at him before. The difference now is this does formalize a method for the DOJ to process these referrals, to do its work that's already ongoing with the special counsel probe, and then ultimately to decide whether one or more of these is actionable, is indictable.
Does DOJ want to hear this from them?
That's a great question. I know we have other experts on the panel who can speak to how they feel about that kind of referral, but I can tell you this. Sometimes the best predictor of behavior is behavior. And so the best predictor of how DOJ processes things from this committee, I would argue, are the past four. They don't rubber stamp anything. There were 4 other individuals through this process already referred for contempt charges. 2 of them were effectively not acted on. So in fairness to Mr. Meadows and Scavino, the DOJ took those prior requests and said no. But as we know, 2 other individuals were indicted. One of them headed to jail, and Steve Bannon. So yes, this can matter.
Andrea.
And as we were just watching several of the officers, Daniel Hodges walking out, Harry Dunn still there, they were trying to defend the members of Congress and were injured in the process. Some actually.
Okay, I'm just turning it down for a minute.
That's Harry Dunn still there.
This feels like a lot of procedural stuff now that we're going to go into. At 1:31:45. What happens next?
Public hearing, and then of course, there was a long lag, and then they presented their.
I just got a lot of procedural stuff coming, but the Republicans don't have a good argument.
Charges and what they've laid out.
I mean, this is kind of.
Because Chuck, what they're talking about Donald Trump.
It's not major arcana, it's just procedural stuff, and the Republicans don't have anything, any kind of strong way to argue against this. But for the reading, I got the tower, and right behind that is the moon and the star.
Certainly from Cassidy Hutchinson and others was
So,
that he wanted to go up to the Hill and was only deterred.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road, and it's hitting the road and moving forward.
Decision to declare victory falsely on election.
So as far, but I'm very disappointed they didn't mention who else, the 4 others. Who is that?
How important is that? If it was,
We'll know by the end of the week.
Say again?
We'll know by the end of the week.
Yeah.
Proving some kind of a legal case against him.
But
Yeah, with that caveat.
Would have been nice to know today.
Withstands
Yeah.
the scrutiny of the Justice Department. It's extraordinarily
But
important because what you're talking
maybe.
about, something that is not an accident, is intentional. And you and I have discussed
He,
this many times, but in order to prove a criminal
He
case
needs all of the negative attention right now.
of criminal statutes,
Nothing needs to divert to the fact that his grits are burnt.
purposefully.
So,
The number of times Mr. Trump was
yeah,
told,
ruh-roh.
that
I
he
love you,
was-
my friend.
the number of times that Mr. Trump was told
Yeah,
that
his grits are extra crusty. And
stand up in any court.
yeah.
The number of times that he was
Yeah.
told
But I like that. I like that focus on Trump
all
himself.
those things even
Mhm.
demonstrate
Yeah.
his intent. And that's the
No Google piece. I don't think we had seen those Hope Hicks clips before. I
we
don't
didn't see.
recall it.
Yeah, and the Kellyanne Conway thing was new.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, she thinks she's rising from the ashes. She's just all happy, like she's gonna have this new great career.
His attorneys, if it ever gets
I think it's good that he's late for her.
Yeah, but nothing needs to divert
his attorneys will argue
in their mind, maybe, from the fact that this is a very bad man who did very bad things.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I bet the people who know that they're in trouble are calling Josh Harley and asking where he gets his running shoes from, because it's time to skedaddle. They need to get some hitch in their giddy up and run it and Roll on. So when I'm highly amused, I'm very hick. I'm sorry.
No, you're not hick. You're Southern, and that's
Well,
awesome.
yes. So
You're Southern. Don't expect those on the right to they're going to say the whole thing's corrupt. They're going to refuse. Yeah, I mean that's. But there's real evidence here that can be used in criminal law, and this isn't. I don't even know what exactly. I was just kind of reading on kind of again what's kind of next. I'm not really.
Yeah.
But they are going. The 4 other people they were talking about. That's aggressive law enforcement against those people. So at 1:30, so 1:36. Let's just say 1:36, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So what's Trump going to do now? Or what's going to happen to Trump? Fani Willis was talking about maybe even in December bringing the recommendations from the grand jury out.
Mm-hmm.
Secretly, quietly, Trump is loving the attention.
I think he also gets a perverse pleasure from the fact that they didn't name the other ones, that it is just on.
I can absolutely see that. I can absolutely see that. There's some people around Trump or some legal minds in Trump's sphere who are like, this could be very bad for him. He's not really going to listen to that. He's just he has something to yell about now. He's the center of attention. You are underestimating the forces against you, Trump. And there's some heavy duty legal pain coming Trump's way. It's on the way. It's still at the end, but it's.
Mm-hmm. To kind of piggyback off of that, Deb asked, because remember we've got the stuff with the free returns tomorrow. Is this going to be the beginning of a really, really stupidously crappy week for him?
What returns are tomorrow?
The tax returns. All of his tax returns from 2015 to 2021.
They're going to decide if they want to release them?
They're going to announce tomorrow what they're doing with that.
Okay, Trump's week. The halls with indictments of Trump. A lot of legal worry.
Uh-huh.
A lot of legal worry. Trump's week. Oh, interesting. Okay. The committee just did what they did, and some of the other Republicans who fought for Trump's Republicans who fought for Trump's stupid ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They are going after them, and this whole right-wing thing, everyone will be on the defensive. And on the one hand, Trump is still in his base of power.
Mm-hmm.
But this 5 of Pentacles, this feels like, I mean, it shouldn't, I mean, you would think on the day when a select committee in Congress refers Donald Trump for at least 4 serious charges, that's all that would be in the energy here. But it's not. This feels like massive money problems. Massive money problems. So if that is coming up as the end like today, this is not, oh gosh, you know. I mean, I remember the one time when I was growing up, we got there was the first convenience store in the area, and it was strangely enough a drive-through type. It was like an open kiosk, and there was a person that would be inside there, and you drive up and say, there's an open door, and you'd say what you wanted, and they'd pick something out and check you out and drive around. And it was just a small thing. Anyway, before that, you know, on a Sunday afternoon, there was nothing open, and all this kind of stuff. And so it was just mom and me, and we really wanted a snack. So we literally looked through the couch cushions, under the couch cushions, the car, and everything, and we scraped together like $1.50 or something. And we went, and mom drove down to the little kiosk, and we got 1 tube of Pringles. We brought it home, and they were like the best Pringles ever because we had them together, and we had done that together. And yeah, that's not the kind of financial problems we're talking here. What else should I read on? Oh, thank you.
Well, Harold asked, approximately how long after the referral should we start to see some movement?
Well, I'll have a look, but I even without all the other stuff going on, and without, because we already know the DOJ is moving forward on stuff, so they may just wait until they're done with their own investigation. And the DOJ is about to get a whole bunch of new evidence from the Select Committee. But I can ask sooner or later, how long until we see the DOJ respond about the referrals for Trump criminal charges. There's already a lot going on there. He already has a whole lot to have sleepless nights over. King of Cups. This would be Biden's DOJ. It's the DOJ's already got the information. Star. High Priestess. 6 of Wands. Temperance. We have to wait.
Okay.
They are absolutely digging down and digging and digging and digging. They're going to go down till they hit bedrock about how Trump tried to take the election. But this Temperance is slow. Well, I'd say slow and steady. But when it comes to Jack Smith,
his version of slow is not the rest.
Yeah. His version of Temperance is, wow. The minions following this person I'm trying to prosecute are not actively trying to kill me. Wow. Not like the dictators he's normally going after who live in these incredibly lawless places. It's like, wow, this is lovely.
I don't think Jack's going to take too long. I mean, I think by release, definitely at the very latest.
Yeah.
Start seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for a recap, there were 4 charges that suggested 4 violations. One of them did include him being ineligible to run for office for state or federal office ever again. There are 4 others that are going to be listed in the report. The report is going to be made public in its to like Freedom of Information Act, like the other people can get it. News outlets can get it by the end of the week. But they're going to have before the end of the year, which is literally just less than 2 weeks away,
right?
A condensed report that any of us can get. So that will be available by the end of the year, which is less than 2 weeks away. So,
yep. And
as long as we've waited less than 2 weeks, I think we're going to be okay.
Yes. And I just pulled cards on a follow-up of this last question about Jack Smith and the DOJ. And card for the reading was the High Priestess, card of secrets and higher wisdom. And then the reading itself, Temperance, that we were just talking about, Hermit, looking very, very closely at the star, all major arcana. All major arcana. Yeah, this is a, and beneath that I've got a Queen of Swords, which is talking to the fact that there are potentially cases and charges coming up against Trump all over. All over.
I mean, we're getting to the point, folks, that he's going to have to be, and I don't know if my little giddy heart can stand it. He's going to have to be either zoomed in to face other charges after already being arrested, or he's going to have to be extradited to different places in his little jumpy jump.
Okay, will he be extradited to different places in his little jumpy jump? I love that. I love that. Oh, Lucky Girl's asking, will the J6 report be in an NFT form?
I could find $10 for a DOJ NFT. Somebody via NFT. $99? No. But I can find 10.
Oh, I'm liking this. Well, I just love that, the way you phrase that. Will Trump be extradited to place in his jumpy jump? He's already orange. It looked like the Blue Men Group, you know, only orange. Two of Pentacles. Oof. Bumpy road. Bumpy road ahead. Ooh. All right. Card for the reading. Two of Pentacles. Bumpy road ahead. Okay.
That means the prison bus has no shocks. Go ahead.
The wheels on the prison bus go round and round. Queen of Cups. This is women specifically around the country. This is your Fonnie Willis, your Letitia James, your, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, bringing some legal pain right through the heart. Trump running out of money. And this is him trying to play games, trying to have his gumball lawyers trying to knock down arguments, refusing to be. You can try to refuse all you want. It's not how this works. But this is strong. And then this is pathetic. Because you don't have a leg to stand on. And beneath that,
I'm laughing so hard.
And then beneath that is, I've got a Ten of Swords. You're in the world. So yeah, you're, yeah.
All I can think of is Con Air and Nicolas Cage and that horrible accent about putting the bunny back in the box. And Trump and his, have you seen Con Air?
A million years ago.
Okay. Well, Nicolas Cage is supposed to be Southern. He cannot do a Southern accent. It's horrific. It was bad in Saving Arizona. It's worse than Con Air. Well, no, it's not worse. Saving Arizona was bad. But he can't do a Southern accent. And so he's just walking, put the body back in the box. And so I'm trying to think of like a Trump orange jumpsuit equivalent. And I can't, put the ketchup back in the packet. I don't know.
Trump in a jumpy jump. No, there's a prosecutor, Jack Smith. Whoo, Jack Smith energy. Woof. JS. It's like, okay. Empress in front of America. Knight of Wands, corruption. His lawyer's fighting really hard so that he doesn't have to show up in places wearing a jumpy jump, but there's so much corruption and it's been for so long. We're going to see it. So I don't know if we'll get the full orange, but I agree, Alan. Toast. Yes.
Burnt. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Tammy A says, put the documents back in the box.
Oh, goodness. Patty had asked, will this end with a Merry Christmas, that Trump will not be allowed to run for office? That is one of the things that they talked about. That's not going to be answered by Christmas, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So maybe next Christmas, but what are we reading on?
What was the question you just asked?
Will he not be allowed to run for office?
Yeah, I just pulled a few cards on that. Sorry.
No, you're good.
150, 130, please. You're so good to me. You're so good to me, my friend. Thank you. I like that, Alan. Orange and red. He'll look like a tequila sunrise. Knight of Wands. They're really going to try to hang on a second. My brain is all over the place. 19 Stallion says, I doubt a plea deal will happen, but I've never seen Trump in jail. Restricted in some way, maybe just pleading he's nuts. I have gotten ankle monitor. Will he be allowed to run? I think he won't. I think they're going to stop him from being able to run again, but it's going to be seen as by the right as the leftist takeover of the government.
This look at my face is not at you. It's at them.
Yeah. No, I understand. I think that's likely to happen, and they'll use it as an excuse on the other side.
You're killing me, Smalls. They're killing me, Smalls. I can't.
I know. All right, let's look at that then. Betty says, I don't see him in jail either. All right, let's have a look at jail. Then let's have a look at ankle monitor.
Okay. So 153.10. Will he actually ever go inside a jail or be sentenced to be inside jail? Serve time in jail.
And then the little grifflings can send him money for the commissary. Is that the name of it?
Yes. Yes, he has to buy his own bowl so he can for his ramen.
Okay. 5 of Swords. 4 of Swords. I think Jack, if it's up to Jack Smith, he would. But whatever Jack Smith recommends has to go through Merrick Garland.
Mm-hmm.
I do have an insult to injury here. He's so awful. This would be him cooling his jets in prison. All right, I'm going to say this. The energy's not strong, but there might be a little fleeting feeling for what it's worth. Jack Smith, he'd be in Supermax because just to keep him safe from, or he'd be in isolation to keep him safe. Let me see if I can get anything else. Oh, Hippie Gypsy, thank you for being here. 3 of Wands. There would be like, if he's going to be held at that, this is like a group gathered outside the prison. But we had a group outside of Mar-a-Lago, all 3 of them, you know. 10 of Swords. There's so many cases against him. Queen of, okay, and I'm getting this burning feeling on my ear. Queen of Swords. Wheel of Fortune. Something. There's something there. There's something, but I don't know. Okay, let's look at Ricky says minimum security. Could be. See, let's look at 156.15. How about let's look at the ankle monitor possibility, maybe. Well, if he ends up in a supermax, it would just be to keep him safe, so people can't get to him. But Queen of Swords, ankle monitor, that would make sense. That let's see, ankle monitor, Moon, Hermit. What this is saying is that there are so many cases arrayed against him that it's like playing Russian roulette, but with convictions and consequences. It may not click here, may not click there. It'll click somewhere eventually. So, was there something else?
Not along those lines. I don't.
Okay. Then how about at 157.30? What about we'll try solitary confinement? Because if they have him on house arrest, he can still incite violence.
Mm-hmm.
Solitary confinement for Donald Trump.
Sorry, Dave. Trump was a veteran like my grandmother drove NASCAR. Oh, God. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're great. So it's okay. That's some heartache. That's pain behind bars. All right, 8 of Cups, Moon, Queen of Pentacles, Page of Cups, Queen of Cups. Evidence, very upsetting. Not just him. You're underestimating the Democrats. More Democrats. What I just keep getting, there are so many different cases.
Yeah. Thank you, Annette. It's very sweet.
And to some extent, you end up with the oh, thank you, Annette. The energy ends up getting knotted, all the different tendrils.
Yeah.
Because there's so many legal things that can land there. So I've got him facing consequences for what it's worth.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, is that the ankle monitor, logistically, I don't think is going to work. It may work for something. He may be sentenced that in one thing. But again, he's got different things in different states, the whole extradition. And so, hypothetically speaking, entertainment purposes only, and also I'm not a lawyer, but picking a random state. New York is not going to be satisfied with him wearing an ankle monitor in Florida. They're not going to allow those sentences to be served concurrently with him sitting at Mar-a-Lago with an ankle monitor on.
Yeah, justice card thief.
Yeah. So he may get off easy in some areas, but not everything.
Right.
And what's going to happen is he's either going to, if there is a good lawyer that will still work with him, they need to be looking at making sure he can serve some of these sentences congruently in these different places, assuming he is found guilty. Because if not, the literal rest of his life is just going to be bouncing from sentence to sentence.
Yep. All right. I feel like I should do a reading for us. What should we be feeling? What should we be thinking? It's 2:01, please.
Gotcha.
This is good. I think it's going to hit us a little bit later that it's like, finally something. Insult to injury. That's pretty much Trump. He's just a human insult added to injury. Marie Sutton says, I can't wait for Junior to make a wasted video saying this is nonsense. And that will be happening in 3, 2, 1. Guys,
Joe Biden.
Yeah. The 7 of Swords. King of Cups. They lost. Biden is president. President Biden. Yes, Trump is still swanning around in Florida. 6 of Pentacles. 10 of Cups. Things are going to be okay. We're not going to lose our democracy. You know, and I hate to even say this, but please take it in the spirit in which it's intended. These are not the last crises we're going to have in our lives and in our political lives. But we're going to make it. We're going to get through. And we get through together. There will be, the other side will get their small wins. But this is a card of charity. This is a card of happy families, completion, glorious rainbows, and there is so much more good than bad. So much more good than bad. Mm-hmm. So even though this jerk is still swanning around for the moment, and there will be tiny victories, he lost. He tried to steal the election. He's tried to steal anything that wasn't nailed down. But he lost the presidency, and he's going to be an ugly footnote in history. Yep. All right. Oh my gosh. Thank you everybody for being here for this. And but Biden's not going to pardon Trump. Matter of fact, I think he's even said so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the difference is Nixon did dirty things, but Nixon wasn't a sociopath.
My opinion, yeah, my opinion is that it was a time when this was unthinkable.
Right.
And so it was, well, this will just end this. This won't drag out anymore.
Right.
And nothing like this is going to happen again.
Right.
And it's like, no, you have to hold people accountable. Is 20 5, is Biden going to pardon Trump? There is a group of presidents. It's a dynasty. It's a select group of people. But once everything comes to light, the higher wisdom and what have you, no. World card. Trump's done. 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 And there's so much that's going to come against Trump that's on the state court as well that Biden couldn't pardon him for. This is major arcana. Okay, Hankala, thank you so much. Thank you. This cue, my possibly all-time favorite meme GIF on the internet, the death puppet. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it is 1:55 p.m. here in Chicago at 3:30 here in Chicago, so hour and a half. Oh, wow. We will actually both be over on the Creative Sprints channel for the afternoon creative sprints. You're leaving a little bit early today?
No, I don't have to.
Oh, good. All right, so we'll be over there and from 3:30 p.m. until 6 p.m. making progress on our creative work. You're always welcome. Other than that, the part of what I'm working on today is still trying to rebuild the website. I'll get those things, the giveaways that I've been giving away, I'll get them back up on that blog there. There is I just want to show off I made this, I designed this Christmas tree protection unit cat division. So I have this is available in the store right now. It's the only thing available in the store, but that will change. So anyway, all right. Thank you for being here, and we will see you. Well, I'll see you here back there tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.